Hello, this is Lama from BarcoDev, and in this tutorial series you're going to learn how to create the character selector. We're going to set up the BP char, whether your skeleton mesh is set and where all the skeleton mesh slots are set. We're going to create this UI and we're going to create the logic so you can actually switch how your character is looking like. As always, you can get all the project files on our Patreon, but let's get right into the tutorial. So to begin with, the starting point in this tutorial series will not be 0. We are already going to have the animation, but it's not really important what animation that is, and you could also do it without an animation. You will need the character you're using. You could use the normal Unreal Engine 5 skeleton or your custom one. In this tutorial, we are going to use a custom one. And in addition to that, you're going to need all the meshes for your clothing and attributes in the form of a skeletal mesh, which is rigged to the same skeleton that you are using for your character. And how that is set up in Blender, we'll show you Steny from BarcoDev real quick, and then we will continue.
So here's the Blender file. It includes the meta rig and the rigging body. If I open this collection, you can see that all the clothes are already parented to the skeleton. Now you can move the character however you like, and the clothes will follow the body. Now you can easily make different outfits versions. I've exported everything as FBX and also included the original Blender file, so you can easily import it into Unreal Engine.
Okay, so let's start with the basic setup. We're going to start by creating a new level. We're going to create the basic template, and we're going to save it in our char selector systems folder. Just level underscore char selector like this. And now we're going to create the game mode and the default pawn for that. And so you're going to hit right click, add a new blueprint, and we're going to create a game mode base, and that will be gm underscore char select. And also you're going to create a blueprint. It should be a character. No, it actually does not have to be a character. You can delete that again. We're going to create a normal pawn because we do not need the functionality to move around, and we're going to call BP char select like this. And you're going to open that up, go into here, add skeletal mesh like this, and we're going to add the skeletal mesh asset we have imported or your own or whatever, and we're going to use character. And for the animation mode, we're just going to use the animation asset. As said, it does not really matter. You could also leave it like that, but I'm going to use walking just so it looks a little bit nicer. And that's the char select for now. And we can already add one slot, so just so you understand what's happening later. So we are going to add another skeletal mesh in here, and we will call it hair, for example. And we can now put the fuzzy hair into here, and we can now see it's not following. But if we use the exact same animation asset, we can see our char has its hair. And we are going to fill up all these skeletal meshes once we've created the data table with all the attributes, but that's basically the concept, so you understand that right away. Okay, so we can go ahead and close that and head over to the data we will have to create. So, and to do that, we're going to create a new folder called data, and in that folder we're going to create a struct which will be called attribute. And in that struct, we are going to assign the mesh list, which will be skeletal mesh object reference, but an array. We are also going to create the mesh name list, which will be an array of strings. We're going to add the attribute name, which will be just a string, a single one. And we are also going to add the current index, which is used to save where the current switcher is set to, which index of the mesh name list and the mesh list. And that should be a single integer. Perfect. So we can go ahead and close that, and now we can create a data table which will be based on, you guessed it, our attribute struct like this, and we'll call that dt attributes. And in here you can now add a list for each of your attributes. For example, we could just now, because we have started, create the one for hair. So we're going to create the row name over here, because you for some reason can't do that down here. The attribute name will also be hair. You can always leave current index at 0. And for the mesh list, we've got 3 hair types. So we're going to use bald, we're going to use fuzzy, and we're going to use straight. And you can now add the same amount of mesh name lists. And now you have to look for the index here. Index 0, that's the bald hairs. So you will put the name in the representative index, so that is aligned. Because if we would put fuzzy into here now, that would be switched up, and in the attribute switcher it would say fuzzy, but the bald hair mesh will be on its on the character's head. So take care of that being always right. So bald, fuzzy, and straight, and that's basically it for the hair attribute. And later on we're obviously going to add the other ones, but this is just for showing the logic behind it. Yes, and that concludes the data table as well. So we can now go ahead and create the UI we need. So we're going to create a little UI folder, and in that we're going to create a widget blueprint. And the widget blueprint will be user widget wbp underscore char selector, like this. And we're also going to create a widget blueprint wbp attribute switcher, which will be used to switch the attributes. And in the char selector you can go ahead and open that up and search for canvas panel, put that into here. And now we're going to put border. Oh no, first let's put the horizontal box into here so we can have 2 borders in there. We're going to use border, duplicate border, and we're going to fill that. We're going to fill that. We're going to select the horizontal box and do size to content, and the anchors should be the lower right thing. If you hit Control and Shift at the same time and then click, it already stretches that out. And the left border will be where the actual content will sit. So we put the fill to 0.3, and the actual screen where the character will walk over here will be 0.7, so 70 and 30%. And the border will be set to transparent, so go over here, hit the brush color and drag the alpha down to 0, like so. And the second border will be some bluish Baku-like color, I guess like this. Don't have the hex code at the moment. Yeah, and into that border we're going to drag a vertical box, which will then contain text, a text block which will say char selector. We're going to center that, and we are also going to give the vertical box, so select that, with heading of around 50, yeah, should be enough, like this. And what we are now going to do is to put an attribute switcher into that box as well, but it's empty at the moment, so you can click that, head over here and hit edit WBP attribute switcher, so we can edit that. And in here we are also going to put a canvas panel, and into that canvas panel we are going to put a border, and we are going to put that border to a bluish color as well. And we are going to then put a horizontal box into that border, give it a padding of 15. Okay, perfect. And now you're going to drag a text block into that horizontal box, and you're going to name that attributes, like so. And we're also going to drag a button into that horizontal box, duplicate it and select the left one and hit that arrow over here so it's on the left side. And we can now go and put texts into the buttons. into the buttons, not above, like so. And I'm just going to use the greater sign, or the smaller sign, and the greater sign for the arrows, because I don't have any arrow images. You could also put a image in here, obviously, but that just depends on how you like your styling. So I'm also going to give that a padding of 10. I'm also, 10 might be too much. Yeah, 5 should be enough. I'm going to give it a padding of 5, and the attribute should have a padding of 10. No, also 5. Yeah, like so. That works, I think. And yeah, I guess if we now, can we put it like this? No. We should change that. And if we now put it to desired up here, if you now put it on that, and we head back into the char selector, we will see that that's right here, but I don't like that it has no padding, and I don't want to do that in here, because then we would have to do it over and over again. So I'm just going to wrap that with another border, and I'm going to put that border to transparent, so alpha to 0, and give it give that thing here a padding of 10, so it always has some space around that. Now it looks like that, and I also don't like that it's not centered, so I'm going to go back, and I think we have to do, oh no, wait. Okay, we actually have to do that into here, in here, because we've got the horizontal box around it, the vertical box, sorry. And yeah, that's that. What we are also going to do, just to be sure that we're never overflowing, we're going to wrap a scroll box around that, and now we're going to duplicate that a bunch of times. And if we now put that to fill as well, we can see, and if we stretch it on that axis as well, that does not look that good. We can see that it can't overflow, so we can have as many attributes as we want. We can then just scroll, and let me just change the color real quick, because that does not match at all. So I'm going to use a darker color for that of the other one. Looks a little bit better. Yeah, okay, so that works. We can now go ahead and delete these, because we don't need as many, and compile save, and we are now going to add that UI to our game. So we're going to select the GM char select, we're going to click the folder icon so we can actually assign our pawn as the default pawn class, like this. Compile save, and we're going to open that one up, and in here you can now drag out of begin play, and we're going to create a widget which will be our char selector. The owning player will be get player controller, so we just put it like this, and we're going to add to player screen or viewport, however you prefer. Can delete these, and if we now go ahead and start, we can see that we've got the UI here at least, but the char is wherever, so we're going to go back into our BP pawn char select, and we can just add a camera like so, and I'm going to place that, let me just, like so maybe, oh god, don't roll it, put it up a little bit, like so, and if we now compile save and start, we can see that he's here. Just so we can test a little bit better, I'm going to place him here, and I'm going to, I would normally do that on my second monitor, but for the sake of this tutorial, you can now see a little bit better what you're actually doing with the camera, because I don't like how far he's up. Gotta take the widget into consideration and put him like this. And if we now go ahead and start, we can see two of them because we need to delete one. And yeah, that concludes this part already. I only wanted to show the basic setup. We've created everything, we've created the data, we've created the UI we need, the testing game mode, the BP char select, and in the next episodes we're going to implement the logic. We're going to populate the data table and assign everything the character should wear or have as hair or whatever. I hope you enjoyed this series, this tutorial. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to join our Discord or ask your questions directly in the comments. Subscribe, leave a like, and see you in the next one. Bye.